And welcome back to the show. With COVID-19, a lot of things people have had to deal with throughout the course of the pandemic. Divorce is rarely easy, and COVID-19 is unfortunately adding to the pressure. New Chapter Capital specializes in divorce financing assistance by providing funds specifically for individuals involved in divorce proceedings, including in their divorce financing assistance. And here now to share a little bit more is the founder and CEO of New Chapter Capital Incorporated, Nicole Noonan. Nicole, good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
And when we talk about where we are right now, COVID-19, divorce was already going up pre-pandemic. When we look at what's happening right now, give us your perspective on what you're seeing.
Definitely a trend upwards. A lot of people were put in a position where if there was already marital discord, this definitely exacerbated the situation. So if you didn't like your spouse before, spending 24/7 with them for the last year certainly did not assist them. The problem is for a lot of people that want to divorce, they don't have the ability financially to go off and find their new living situation, whether it's moving apartments or selling their home. And certainly they don't have enough funds to actually go out and hire an attorney and get the divorce. So it's definitely been a perfect storm of people who want a divorce, but don't financially have the wherewithal to do so.
Where did you get in your mind that, we really need to take a look at this? Divorce funding is really necessary. When did this come to mind to you?
Yeah, in my own practice. So while I was practicing during the housing crisis, I would have people, both men and women, coming into my office. They had a great house, but at the same time, they had no way to pull the money from it, no way to liquidate. And I thought, wow, there's got to be something else out there to help these people going through divorce, to get them to their new chapter. And in the UK and in Australia, divorce funding had been around for many, many, many years, and people really loved it. The firms loved it, the clients loved it. And I said, wow, why don't we have this in the US? And that's what I did back in 2011. I started working with funding, and it's been just growing ever since, helping lots of people.
What have you seen from the UK that you say, listen, you know what? We need to really concentrate on this here.
Right. So I saw cases. I mean, I'd hear about cases from fellow practitioners that they would have a spouse that would not be able to afford their services otherwise, and were getting backed into taking a settlement less than what they were entitled to. Or even worse, were staying in really bad marriages, whether they were married to a narcissist or they were enduring both financial abuse, physical abuse, and mental abuse. So in the UK and Australia, and now that's what we have in the US.
Yeah. And so how do people typically go about preparing financially for dealing with divorce?
Knowledge is power. So I always say when people first think about, do I want to go ahead and get a divorce, gather as much information as possible, because typically there's one spouse that's the person that's either the breadwinner and the one who handles all the finances, and the spouse that takes a back seat to that. So when you're thinking about divorce, start preparing, gather the right information, the right documents, bank statements, mortgage statements, anything you can get your hands on, do that, and start to get a real clear picture of what your net worth is as a married couple. And then be realistic about it. Is this something where I'm going to need to hire an attorney? Do I have assets that are going to need to be divided? And if so, what's the right fit for me, for a counsel, what attorney is a good fit for me? And that's always something I really encourage people to take some time to find a good attorney, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that person.
A lot of time and potentially a lot of money. And I know that divorce is the final, but there are some alternatives. So walk somebody through what some of the alternatives are in a divorce proceeding.
Yes. So it doesn't need to be that you end up before a judge with two lawyers. There are other alternatives. And certainly you shouldn't throw good money after bad by hiring counsel and putting your attorney's kids through college and not putting your own. So look at avenues like mediation, where you go in and meet with a mediator. It's definitely can be cost effective. There's also collaborative law. Now you're still hiring attorneys, but you're not necessarily going through the court route if that's something that you can do. again, if you don't need attorneys and there is no assets to divide and you can make good decisions together as a couple, because at one point you were in love, if you can now get through this by sitting down and saying, hey, these are my non-negotiables, what are yours, and these are yours, and going ahead and filing by yourself, you can do that too. So just be mindful of, sometimes with the more assets there is more to fight over, but if there aren't many assets there and much to fight over, then you can take a piece of paper, fill out what you think you want, what he wants, and be done with it. So
yeah. People have a tendency to gravitate towards television. We like that. And as they gravitate towards television and internet, obviously they're seeing more and more stories of people who are big name people who are really coming through and announcing their divorce after years. We can talk about Bill Gates. The list can go on. We can fill out the show. But as we're seeing these big names, it does have this trickle-down effect where I think sometimes people look and say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But the only problem is that sometimes you can't do it the way they do it.
Exactly. Right. Again, more assets, more to fight over. I mean, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt were fighting over south of France winery vineyard. I'm sure Bill Gates and Melinda will be fighting over things that most people would not even dream of fighting over. So, but then again, I do think they are human, and like us, they were, whether or not they have 20 homes and could live separately throughout the pandemic, they were still married during the pandemic, and it was a stressful time. So like you and me, they can go off and file for a divorce because they're sick of being together and they want to move on to their next chapter. It's just sometimes they have more to fight over and can go off and hire private judges and the best attorneys in the world to represent them, but that may not be necessary for everybody.
Yeah. With it, divorce can potentially be the worst, but yet and still, there could be some good that comes out of it. So talk to me about the good side and what you've seen.
Yeah, I always think, children first. So when you're in an unhappy marriage and there is fighting going on back and forth and people are scared to actually go off and divorce because of their children, they stay in the marriage because of their children, that may not always be the right move. Certainly they want to see their parents happy, whether that's together or apart. And there's certainly many books and classes you can take on how to really deal with children going through a divorce, whether it's through a school or your church, to go and have that help. And there are people, therapists certainly, that help children going through a divorce, and parents parenting those children going through a divorce. So it's not always the best answer to stay in an unhappy marriage.
Yeah. So what tips do you give viewers right now who may be watching and saying, I need to know something?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The first tip is to knowledge. So like I said before, whether finding that marriage certificate, your passports, make sure you have copies of important documents. It's really important. Should you decide to go forward with it, explore the different avenues, whether it's mediation. There are programs, platforms on the web that you can actually file for yourself online, and it's very inexpensive. But of course, if there's a custody issue and you want there's certain assets that you definitely want and you think your spouse is going to fight over, it may lead to litigation. So explore the world of divorce attorneys and make sure you get the right fit, and to know that divorce funding is available if you need it. And we provide the funds for legal fees and expert costs, so forensic accountants, and for some clients for reasonable living expenses. So there are alternatives.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing with us. I think it's some very important information, especially as we see these numbers continue to rise coming out of COVID. Couples and families need to know. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All righty. Well, we want to let you know, if you want more information, we encourage you to do us a favor. Visit their website at newchaptercapital.com, and then also follow them on Facebook at Divorce Finance. We do have more show. We want you to stay with us. Open will continue right after this.